Welcome to Beyond Just Business, the podcast for those who want more. More clarity, more direction, and potentially more meaning. We explore the thinking behind success, the habits that shape performance, and the questions that go deeper than profit margins. If you're ready to challenge the obvious and rethink the way life and business work, you are absolutely in the right place. So today, following on from our last conversation, we're going to talk about something that they say it's one of the biggest killers, and it's not smoking, it's not sitting, it's actually loneliness. And I'm going to take the alternative approach that loneliness, and I don't mean loneliness as in someone who's been left on their own or someone who doesn't have a social ecosystem. I'm going to talk today about the benefits of someone who's happy on their own. What do you think, Paul? What do you think of loneliness or being alone nowadays?
I love it.
Join us next week. Paul doesn't want to talk to anyone right now. He prefers to be alone.
I love my alone time. I absolutely love my alone time. But then again, because I'm naturally introverted, so I get energy from being alone. Whereas if you're extroverted, they'll get energy from being with other people. But no, absolutely, I value and I love my alone time.
So if you're looking at a battery that's getting charged or giving you energy, do you think you have to be aware of the motivations as to why? Let's say, for example, you like being on your own. Let's take the opposite of that with someone who's extroverted. Someone who's extroverted is outgoing. They want to be in a room full of people. They're dynamic. They might be loud potentially, but they're very sociable. If you looked at the darker side of that, is it that they need to feed off other people's energy to top up their own tank? Whereas because you're happy within yourself and you're introverted, you've already got that equilibrium within you of sorts.
I think you need both, honestly. If you're extroverted, you still need that alone time. But if you're running away from it, then okay, that's the concern. Look, I'm naturally introverted. I absolutely love my alone time. But if I'm avoiding meeting with people, that's a red flag. Because I also get a huge amount of enjoyment from being with particular people. So I've got to make sure that I'm not hiding myself. I want to make sure that I'm meeting with different people and having really great conversations. I get a huge amount of energy from that side as well. If I was just staying in my office just on my own, that would be a red flag for me. And vice versa, if you're extroverted and outgoing, but you're constantly out there with other people and not spending some time on your own in just quiet contemplation, that for me personally will be a red flag.
So basically super aware that we all need both. And for all of us, it's probably with 99% certainty that all of us don't have, there's maybe 1% of people that have what they would deem to be the perfect balance of they like to go out, but they like their alone time. The vast majority of us will have a leaning towards one or the other.
I think what it triggers as well is that the more you know yourself and your makeup, I don't mean the makeup that you're wearing, Andrew, your eyeshadow is just amazing.
Thank you. Shout out Damien Conley.
I think the more you analyze what actually gives you energy and what drains your energy, the more you're going to know about yourself and what makes you up. You got to lean into that. Okay, so what is actually going to boost your energy? That for me is pretty much a good amount of it. Meeting people is one sense, but for example, I don't go to a new place on my own. It could be another country or anywhere. And if I was to explore on my own, I wouldn't enjoy it. Whereas I love exploring places and things with other people. So whether it be my wife or my kids or whoever it might be, I love exploring with somebody else. But ask me to do that on my own, I don't really enjoy. So that's one example of the difference between what really gives me energy and what dissipates my energy.
But what makes sense there is the other side of it. The extreme version of being alone is someone who maybe, you could look at someone who wants to travel the world and wants to do it themselves, and they travel to the deepest, darkest parts of India to be on their own, experience the rich texture of traditional values and the locale. If you took that in the opposite sense, you'd say, that's the fella who's out. He goes to the opening of an envelope. Like, he's always got a glass of champagne in his hand. He's always talking to everybody. But one of them is seen as more outgoing and almost garish than the introspective piece. I would definitely have a leaning towards the middle. As I've gotten older, I've definitely gotten more comfortable by myself. I like my own company more than going out for the sake of going out. I think I have this internal hourglass where I say, if I'm spending time with someone, and it's nothing against the people, maybe it is, let's be frank, that I look at it and say, if I was to spend time with this person and I didn't get to do anything after that, why did I spend the time doing that? Why did I spend the time in that situation that I didn't want to be in? And I think how I validate it in my mind is, if it's for my betterment, I'll do something uncomfortable. So rather than sitting at a dinner table with a load of people who just want to talk about things that are maybe inappropriate and then just smile politely because that's what I've always done, or go to a social event where I've got to get the handshake out there, got to meet people, got to really connect and network because potentially it could help me grow professionally. Maybe I'll learn, get some business from it, or meet some interesting, dynamic people. That'll win every time. But
Yeah.
it's definitely age. I definitely think when I was 19, 20, 21, 22, I'd be out anywhere. You're out with people, you're spending time with people. It's that kind of classic. You're standing outside a shop for the sake of standing outside a shop with all your friends. When you become older, that's something that has more of a draw. But I think also from a perspective of, I don't have to explain myself. If you meet me at a
Yeah.
party, I'm very outgoing. I really enjoy chatting to people. But I absolutely love when I come home and I just get to switch off.
Yeah. Because the older you get, when you get to my age, it's even worse.
Like ancient Paul, you need a bit of makeup. Hit Amy Connolly for the oldies edition. Will you get him a free sampler box?
Where was I going to go with that one?
That's
what
the
was I gonna
memories
say?
got all the way up to get you back up. You're talking about being with age and not wanting to go out.
Yeah. So I think that the older you get, the more you value time because you know it's running out. You do value time. So therefore you're going to be more discerning about what it is that you want to spend your time on. So there's certain people I won't meet. There's certain circumstances or situations I might get invited to. I just won't attend. Now I'll give my excuses or declines, but I choose not to attend. And that's the difference. I think a lot of people attend events or to want to be seen to be attending events because they feel they should to, have to, need to. I choose. And that was a big learning for me, whereby years and years ago, I realized, actually, you know what? Nobody's going to give me what I want on the plate, for one better word. But so therefore I've got to go after it and I've got to choose it for myself.
Do you think those who make that decision to go out and about, I say out and about, but let's say we all know the people, like they're forever at events and they'll meet you. I remember the amount of times I met people and they say, yeah, I'm off the drink now. I was at 28 weddings and 48 such and such, and then I'm taking a break. I'm like, okay, cool. Just for the weekend, I've got 11 more next week. I'm kind of going, why do you have 11 weddings? Do you think other parts of your life take a toll when you do that? So let's say at my stage, people have families. Is there a point where you're doing things for the sake of doing it and potentially escaping?
Yeah, they're running away from home life is what they're doing.
Yeah, is
Yeah,
that
no,
the
there is
case?
an element of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I meet some people that, they're great people, but they almost twitch. They have to keep doing something all the time. If I wanted to torture them, there's no point in sticking a pencil through their hand. If I just sat them still and said, sit there, that'd be their version of hell. I don't think they'd know what to do because they have this natural disposition where if I keep moving, maybe unconsciously, if I keep moving, I'm of value. If I keep moving, I'm doing this, I'm of use, I can X, Y, Z. Whereas that introspective piece for people is, I'm seeing people because I want to see them. Or what? I don't want to go to that wedding, or I didn't want to get invited. I suppose I used to look at an old aunt we had, I think I mentioned her in a previous one, where I used to call her ET because she was about 3 feet tall. She told you exactly what she was thinking. And if she didn't want potatoes, there's no justification type of stuff. Where did we go in society where you can't just say no and someone doesn't have to find out why you're saying no? What's the story with that?
Yeah, so in Ireland, that's how we're growing up. You go to any other country and they don't excuse themselves, but they don't have to give reasons. Actually, a good practice to learn is actually saying no without actually giving a reason.
It sounds like a glorious existence, Paul. I think Mrs. Doyle comes to the forefront. You will. Go on. You will. You will. And anyone who doesn't know, that's a reference to Father Ted as a sprightly tea lady who will not take no for an answer. Ironically, in Germany, same thing. I've anecdotally heard that if someone offers you a drink and you say no, you are not getting a drink ever again. Best of luck with that. Do you think that's an Irish thing? Almost that underlying keeping up appearances rather than saying, you know what, I don't want to do that?
I haven't traveled to every single country in the world.
You haven't?
Because I would just want to explore on my own. But no, okay, look, for the vast majority of people that have come across and discussions that I've had, I've found it more prevalent in Ireland. It doesn't exist much in the UK. A little bit, but again, there's a lot in the UK. It doesn't exist much in the UK. It doesn't exist in US is what I've come across or what I've seen. And the vast majority of European countries, it doesn't exist. People don't give reasons. They just say no. If they don't want cup of tea, they'll just say no. Whereas in Ireland, we've got to explain everything away. I had to get over a big belief that I had whereby you had to be constantly doing something. That was a big lesson for me. And there's still sometimes, because I'll get itchy feet in terms of I want to be doing something, but now it's more, okay, so what's the DIY job that I'll do, or what's the project I'll get involved in? In my generation, the older generation, you've got to be doing something. You just did not sit on the couch, because if you sat on the couch, you get a clobber across your head and told to get up and do something. So that's the belief that I grew up with. I had to get rid of it in terms of, actually, no, it's okay to just chill on the couch if I so choose. The idea that you got to be constantly active can be a belief as well.
It's interesting you say that, because I had someone literally say this to me. It really harked back to my childhood, which my mum she usually spoke with a wonderful accent of clipping you across the back of the head in a lot of situations. If you said a rude joke, clip at the back of the head. That one really came out with someone where they talked about why they always felt the need to be doing something. And the actual example they gave was, if you're working away or you're taking your lunch break and you were watching a YouTube video or watching an episode of something, they would have a tab open of work. If someone walked in, they'd tap the one that, oh, it's just working. You're like, what is that? And I will freely admit that when I was in school, in senior school, and we were doing our 6th year study, I had perfected the art of my head on my hands, and I had it perfectly done where I would fall asleep sometimes, but my head would go from left to right. So if someone stopped me, it looked like I was reading, it looked like I was focusing, but my head was going left to right, like this perfectly timed, whatever the word is, the thing that you teach.
For piano.
But yeah, the pendulum, we'll use that for as an example. But what's ironic is, why can't you just be having your lunch? Why can't you just be sitting staring into space? What is that with us? Because I would imagine if I said that to someone else, you get a load of people who put their hand up and say, that's me too. Why can't you stare out the window? Is it because you're making other people feel uncomfortable because they're doing stuff? Or is it that you've been taught to be of use, you have to be moving?
I think it's the latter in terms of, because again, if you think about it from parents' perspective, that's what they did. From school perspective, you were told to sit still, but you had to be doing something. You had to be doing either homework or reading or doing something. You couldn't be just staring out the window. Like, Jesus, God forbid you staring at the window for half an hour. You weren't allowed that in school. And then you enter work environment. I didn't go to university. I did part-time education to become an accountant. So I was always in work. You had to be seen doing something the whole time. Otherwise, your boss was down on top of you. Right through my life, and I look up, go over it. So at home, in primary school, secondary school, and in your career, you always got that virtual clip across the year to constantly be doing something. And so that's a belief.
Because it's interesting, even now, I had a very brief window of 2 hours over the weekend just gone, where we're at the stage of life where it's a bit messy. We've lots going on. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I think that's part of it as well. But let's just say personal time happens very infrequently. And when it does, you don't know what to do with yourself. So I find myself defaulting to being useful. Instead of having 2 hours where I say, let's say I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to hit the spa, or go to the sauna, or go visiting someone, I had to overcome the internal, I'm going to power wash the driveway. It's like, why was I power washing the driveway? I can power wash the driveway when the kids are here and they can wander around. But there's a simple everyday example as to my natural state was to be of use even when there was no one around. It's interesting that I'm 40. I look a lot younger for those who are viewing, and I'll send on my beauty regime. It involves a goat and a hill. I'll tell you more off screen. But when I equate that now, maybe it's my age that I'm kind of going, you know what? And the people who I need to explain it to are the classic thing of those who matter don't mind, and the ones that mind don't matter. There is that element of having to really lean into yourself and being okay with what someone else may perceive. Because someone could see you working away and think you're useless because you keep working and you don't get the job done. And someone else might say, they sit there and they do the job and they think they're lazy. So they'll have their mind made up about you anyway, which I think people do. 5 seconds after I meet you, I've made my mind up, whether I like it or not.
But the only caveat I would put on that is that if your self-worth is high, because I'll come across people whereby their self-worth is low and they're still doing things to please other people.
Here we go. I'm getting educated again.
All right.
I tell you what.
That's situations. That's circumstances.
I told you, Paul, in these conversations, I don't want to learn anything. I specifically said I don't want to progress my personal, professional, or spiritual development. We signed an agreement. To that end, let's round off the conversation on that note and let's make it useful for people. So first and foremost, it's learned where we all think we need to be of use.
Yeah.
And there is a lot to be said for being alone. Strategically, I don't mean the sad type of alone and loneliness of people who don't have a network or support. I'm very keenly aware that there is a tragic side to that nowadays. We're never more connected, but never more disconnected in a lot of ways. And that will affect a lot of the older in our society. So I'm very sensitive to that. But if you're talking about that self-worth piece for people, as a takeaway towards the end of this conversation, what would you leave them with to be able to either explore or reflect on to maybe work on that a little bit? And let's just use it as a beginner's guide. We're not, you're not dealing with any black belts in self-worth here. So let's keep it simple for them.
All right.
Imagine you're talking to a Labrador.
Don't talk about my dog, jeepers. Okay, she's not a Labrador. The first thing I would say is stop judging yourself.
Okay.
That's the first thing I would say. If you actually become more sensitive to the phrases and the words that you say to yourself, that's one thing. But how you compare yourself to others and you make yourself small, what you're doing is you're lowering your self-worth. So if you compare yourself and you compare yourself to the Joneses and you say to yourself, oh, I wish I had their car, their house, their job, or their money, or whatever it means, ultimately what you're doing is you're making yourself small and reducing your self-worth. Self-worth is, there's so much to cover on it. I'm happy to cover it on other episodes, but it's more, that's the first point. I become more sensitive and be aware of where you're judging yourself and realize how much you're making yourself small.
That's an interesting one. So for people who are listening, your beginner's guide or your homework for the end of today's episode is just to stop judging yourself. Just the first protocol, stop judging yourself. And maybe with the sprinkling of stop comparing yourself, because your version of that is not someone else's version of it. Well, on that bombshell. Okay, that's great, Paul. I appreciate that. I think next time we'll discuss self-worth, because I know you've got some really clear examples that are very helpful. For everyone out there, I think this is important. Being alone can get a bad rap, but there's a lot to be gotten from exploring who you are. And I think that can enhance you personally, professionally. It can make you better at what you do, whether you're a parent, husband, wife, or in work. I think this is an episode you should probably listen to twice because it can really have a great impact on your life. And that's it for another episode of Beyond Just Business. If it gave you something to think about or it helped you see things a little differently, we're delighted. But make sure you're following so you don't miss out on the next episode. Stay curious, keep questioning, and we will see you next time.